Venus Williams did not lose because of her age. She lost because her opponent comes from a world that Western tennis still does not truly understand. A world where the name Alexandra Eala is becoming a warning to any veteran stepping onto the court. At the 2026 ASB Classic in New Zealand, the unthinkable happened. A 20-year-old player from the Philippines, alongside an 18-year-old partner, took down not just one, but two living legends of the tennis world, Venus Williams and Alina Svitolina. A combined 76 years of age, 11 Grand Slam titles, and 4 Olympic gold medals were defeated by a duo whose combined age is less than 40. The moment involved saving 7 consecutive set points, bold volleys, returns of serve that were chillingly precise. But what made the WTA exclaim unbelievable was not just the numbers. It was the attitude. It was the uncompromising audacity of a young player who had fallen many times in previous tournaments, now standing in the spotlight and turning a legend like Venus Williams into a supporting character in her own game. The Filipino crowd in Auckland wept. On social media, the victory clip went viral with the speed of a scandal. But this was no scandal. This was a manifesto. Alexandra Eala is no longer the prodigy from Southeast Asia. She is a real threat to any big name in the WTA system. And if you have never heard her name before, it is perhaps time you started paying attention. This is more than just a win. This is the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter that you will want to follow from the very first steps. Because the question is no longer is Alexandra Eala capable, but rather, who can stop her? Do not miss any developments in the journey to redefine the golden generation of women's tennis. Subscribe to the Pro Tennis 360 channel to follow every historic shot with us. A star maturing quietly from the shadows. Before the world called her name, Alexandra Eala had to learn to call it herself. Among hundreds of young players from everywhere, each carrying a Grand Slam dream and a racket heavy with expectation. No privileges. No American media reporting on every step. Only clay courts, sweat, and endless training sessions in the searing heat of Mallorca, where the Rafa Nadal Academy became the only anchor in a brutal tennis world. When players her age were being honored at junior tournaments in Europe, Alex, a young girl from a country few associate with tennis, quietly raised a junior Grand Slam title at the 2020 French Open. But instead of the spotlight following her, experts claimed it was just a one-time stroke of luck. Perhaps because she wasn't from the US. Perhaps because the surname Eala didn't generate enough virality on ESPN news feeds. However, what they didn't know was that Alexandra did not need the light. She created her own light through the disappointment after every loss, through transcontinental flights to challenger tournaments that no one reported on. Matches with no spectators, no hashtags, only a question echoing in her mind. Do I really belong here? And it was in that quiet space that Alex grew. She learned to suppress her anger when underestimated. She learned to wipe away tears in the locker room after missing out on third rounds. And she learned that she didn't need anyone's recognition to become dangerous. The match against Venus did not start at the ASB Classic. It began during those years of silence that no one bothered to notice. And by the time the world finally saw her, it was already too late. She was no longer a rising star. She was a seismic shift. And the most interesting part? That was only the first set. Do you think every champion needs the media to shine? Or does neglect sometimes create an unstoppable hunger? When Venus was overwhelmed, the battle between legend and youthful instinct. From the opening minutes of the match in Auckland, people noticed something strange. Venus Williams was backing up. Throughout a career spanning over 2 decades, she has been the icon of power, of an overwhelming offensive style, using experience to stifle any young player who dared look up. But this time, everything was reversed. Alex Eala, without flinching, took the initiative, opening points with a series of powerful serves toward Venus's body, a tactic usually seen only in top 10 players. In the first few minutes, the crowd might have thought this was just a moment of impulse. But when Eala saved 3 consecutive set points with sharp returns, no one doubted anymore. She didn't just come here to learn. She came to win. The match, dubbed the Battle of Generations, was no longer a contest of age. It was a collision between an old tennis world, where experience and reputation carry weight, and a new generation, where speed, data analysis, and survival instinct are the ultimate weapons. Venus, with all her former aura, began to make mistakes. She hesitated when approaching the net. She lost her rhythm in long rallies. And most tellingly, she lost the look that once made opponents tremble. On the other side of court, Alex, though breathing hard and with shaking hands, kept an unblinking gaze, as if she were the one in control of the match. And when the WTA reposted the first set highlights with a single caption, "Unbelievable," the whole world understood that this was no longer an isolated event. This was a moment of shifting order. An icon had been shaken by a girl once overlooked. The question is, are the legends holding onto their seats for too long? Or have we, the fans, missed a new generation because we are too busy worshiping the old names? Tactical mastery, when precision beats reputation. The truth is that Venus and Svitolina did not lose due to a lack of technique. They lost because they couldn't read their opponent. In elite sports, the difference doesn't come from arm strength, but from the skill of reading the game, something Alex and Iva performed at an unexpected level. The young duo constantly broke Venus's familiar patterns. Every time Williams tried to maintain a rally rhythm, Eala took the initiative to cut it short with a drop shot right behind the service line. When Svitolina moved forward to pressure the net, Jovic responded with a cold lob that left the audience breathless. This was not instinctual tennis. This was a tactical equation solved before they even stepped onto the court. The numbers don't lie. Eala and Jovic reached a first serve percentage of 69%, overwhelming their opponents 58%. The point win percentage on the first serve was as high as 61%, while Venus and Alina were restricted to just 51%. These indicators show it wasn't just youth, but refinement in every shot. Not everyone noticed this, but in the second set, a time when many young players stumble mentally after an emotional set win, Eala became colder than ever. She began to coordinate ball speed, control rally length, and, most frighteningly, forced Venus to move toward her non-dominant side. This is the tactic used to defeat tall, right-handed players. And Eala, someone who spent hundreds of hours studying video analysis at the Nadal Academy, executed it like a machine. Tennis is no longer a sport based solely on inspiration. In Alex's world, it is science, it is strategy. And when you have both a heart and a brain on the court, you can beat anyone. Are legends like Venus falling behind because they aren't updating their strategies? Or is this just a sign that women's tennis is evolving faster than anyone imagined? The crowd rises, but not to cheer for Venus. It was the end of the match. Venus Williams was preparing to return serve, potentially her last chance to keep the hope of a comeback alive. The audience held its breath. The camera caught a close-up of her eyes. They no longer held the steel that once made Serena tremble. Only a faint blur remained, as if she knew what was about to happen. Alex launched the final serve. Not too powerful, not too dangerous, but precise, to the point that Venus could not return the ball over the net. A moment of stunned silence. And then the entire stadium exploded. But the surprise was not the cheering itself. It was who was cheering. The Philippine flag flew high in the Auckland stands. Hundreds of people, from students to migrant workers, screamed, cried, and hugged each other at a sporting event they never thought they would witness firsthand. It wasn't because of a victory. It was because they had just seen a part of themselves defeat a system that always kept them on the sidelines. Meanwhile, Venus quietly walked off the court. No fist pump, no smile, just a very slight bow, as if she knew the legend had reached its end. Alex didn't scream. She didn't kneel. She just squeezed her teammate's hand, a small gesture, but one carrying the weight of a new chapter in tennis history just being turned. In that moment, the entire tennis world realized this was not a surprise. This was the inevitable result of a generation that had quietly prepared to rewrite the power order. Have you ever witnessed a crowd rise not to greet an old idol, but to welcome a new heir? Not the first time Venus has fallen, but it has never hurt like this. In more than 2 decades of elite competition, Venus Williams has lost many matches to champions like Hingis, Henin, Sharapova, and of course, Serena. But there was a common thread. Those were all acceptable losses, losing because the opponent was too strong, because of age, or because of form. But the loss to Alexandra Eala? It left a deeper cut. Not because of the score, not because of the small venue, but because of the way Venus was completely dominated by a young player with nothing but heart and strategy. No million-dollar fashion brand, no media management team, only a name unfamiliar to the American audience, and a will that made every one of Venus's shots meaningless. An ESPN expert remarked immediately after the match, Venus didn't just lose. She was uninvited from a party she used to host. The statement sounds harsh, but it reflects a truth. Venus is no longer the center of the court. And perhaps, for the first time in her career, she felt she was no longer feared. Because the way Eala looked at her, without fear, without caution, without mental blockage, is something that had never happened. In sports, when a legend realizes the opponent's gaze no longer holds respect, it is the clearest signal that the reign has changed hands. Even more unfortunately, if this is the end of Venus's career, it wasn't Serena, not Osaka, nor Coco Gauff who escorted her off the spotlight, but a name few in America have ever pronounced correctly, Eala. The thought-provoking question is, should Venus stop after this match? Or will she continue to fight in a tennis world that is changing so fast, to the point that even legends like her can no longer keep up? A victory beyond sports. The new generation of Southeast Asia has spoken. Beyond being a sporting shock, Alex Eala's victory carries symbolic weight. This is a rare instance where a Southeast Asian player, not from Japan, China, or South Korea, led global sports headlines for a day without a scandal or an incident. This is not a feel-good Cinderella story victory. This is the result of a training system quietly built in the dark. The consequence of thousands of hours of training in Spain, of small tournaments reported by no one, of a mentality no one taught but was forced to exist. Resilience when being underestimated. In the post-match comments, Alex said something seemingly simple. I've looked up to Venus since I was a kid. But today, I didn't come here to idolize her. I came here to win. That is the mindset of a new generation. No apologizing for daring to beat an idol. No asking for permission to shine. In Southeast Asia, this victory was received no differently than a championship. Not just because a Filipino won big, but because it opened a vision. You don't need to be born into the system to defeat the system. On Twitter, an American account wrote, "Who is Alexandra Eala? And how did we miss this?" That question isn't just for her. It is for an entire region once forgotten by Hollywood, ESPN, and even the ADP. The Gen Z of tennis is no longer waiting to be recognized. They seized the spotlight. And this time, they didn't need fur coats, gimmicks, or media drama. Just a precise serve, a clean victory, and a silent but echoing declaration. We are ready. Do you think tennis is still a game of superpowers? Or is it time to admit, the outsiders of yesterday are becoming the rule writers of today? Could Alexandra Eala become the WTA's newest threat? The tennis world is asking, is this just a temporary moment of brilliance or the beginning of a storm named Eala? In reality, Alexandra is not a lucky player. Her junior record was very prominent, winning the girls' doubles at Roland Garros 2020 and the US Open 2021, once reaching the top 3 of the ITF junior rankings. But since entering the professional arena, she almost disappeared from the international media radar, not due to lack of ability, but because her starting point was so far from the central system of women's tennis. The difference is, she did not give up. While many young players lose their spirit after struggling early years in the WTA, Eala continued to accumulate experience, gradually improving her technique, speed, and mental toughness. And the victory over Venus, even at a season-opening tournament, is undeniable proof that she is ready. A WTA expert noted, Eala's not a wild card anymore. She's a dark horse. And that is the most dangerous phrase in tennis. Because a dark horse is the type of opponent whose strategy you cannot read, whose power you cannot predict, and who can knock you out in the first round without any prior warning. Currently, if Alex continues this progress, she is highly likely to receive wildcards for main draws at Grand Slams this year. And when she steps onto center courts, where American and European audiences will hear the announcer read the name Alexandra Eala aloud for the first time, a question will arise. Who led her into this round? And when they watch her play, they will understand. She didn't fall in. She broke in. With ability, strategy, and the thing the oldest players are gradually lacking. Hunger. A bone-deep hunger to prove that I didn't come here to stand in line. Who do you think will be the next victim? When giants are no longer scary. In sports, there is an unwritten rule. Big names are always favored. Even as their form declines and their age mounts, they are still seated, still given wildcards, still placed under the spotlight because their name deserves respect. But Alexandra Eala did not read that script. She was not overwhelmed by Grand Slam titles. She did not hesitate before the Olympic aura. When facing Venus and Svitolina, she did not play like a young player trying to gain valuable experience. She played as if the legends were standing between her and her own future. And that is why Eala is dangerous. She belongs to Gen Z, where every limit is questioned. A generation that is not afraid to offend the system, not afraid to challenge prejudice, and certainly not afraid of big names. In their eyes, the match is not an occasion to compete with a senior, but an opportunity to prove they can be the successor. Right here, right now. Tennis is changing. And what makes it change is not technology, but the mindset of the young people entering the game. They don't come to hear about history. They come to rewrite that history in their own way. So, if you are a loyal fan of names like Venus, prepare yourself. Because the giants are being challenged, not by the next generation, but by the girls once forgotten on the tennis map. And if you want to be the first to follow the process of new names like Eala taking over the game, subscribe to the Pro Tennis 360 channel today. Because the most interesting battles are still ahead. The first day of the rest of her career. There are days that change an entire career. For Alex Eala, it was a day in early 2026 in a small arena in Auckland, far from the Grand Slam aura, but causing a shockwave stronger than a US Open final. When the final serve ended the match, it didn't just take Eala to the next round. It opened a new chapter, one where she is no longer a player from a strange-sounding country in the tennis world, but a player that any opponent must analyze carefully before taking the court. Because now, you cannot ignore Alexandra Eala. She is living proof that you don't need the backing of a major system to create a miracle. All you need is the courage not to retreat, even when standing before a former world number one. Venus Williams once said that the only loss is the match you refuse to fight. And that day, Venus fought. But the winner was the one who had waited for this opportunity her whole life. The American media will have to learn to pronounce her name. Tactical analysts will have to add her to the list of new powers. And audiences will have to get used to the image of a Southeast Asian player taking over the center court. The most notable thing? Alex Eala doesn't need anyone to believe in her. Because she believed in herself before the rest of the world even noticed. As for you, if you want to follow the journey from outsider to champion, hit the subscribe button on the Pro Tennis 360 channel. Because here, we don't just tell stories of those who have succeeded. We follow the journey while success is still taking shape. The story the American media missed. Alexandra Eala is not from the United States. She doesn't have a TikTok account with millions of followers. No major sponsor is chasing her. And before this match, she had never made a sports headline on American soil. But she just did what hundreds of American players dream of, beating Venus Williams on the WTA stage itself. Maybe you will forget the match score. Maybe you won't remember every rally. But you will remember the moment a young girl, with a calm gaze, launched the final serve that shook the tennis world. In a sport accustomed to icons from the US, Europe, or Australia, Eala's victory is a reminder that real talent can come from anywhere. And sometimes those who are underestimated the most are the ones who make the entire system look back at itself. What do you think of this historic moment? Is it time for the world to recognize the new generation? Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to the Pro Tennis 360 channel, where we don't just bring you scores, but also the twists that the media hasn't caught yet.